Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I like to discuss another business that's moving some of its operations from the UK to expand further in the EU as a direct result of Brexit. I'll be discussing why it's the reasons more than just the company itself that matters, and show how the plight of another business demonstrates the problems that things like this have, even on businesses that do not trade directly with other countries. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So I think a few people may have seen the story. So late last week, it was DS Smith, which is the largest packaging company in the UK, saying it was closing down one of its factories in Kent, but expanding operations in Europe. You know, the closure is reported to be likely leading to 100 job losses. The factories in Kent, as I say, below national average levels of unemployment. We know that there is a severe labour shortage in the UK. It seems that there are probably jobs that many of these workers affected could find. I think there was a hint from the Unite Union that they may have to relocate, but there were jobs available, and they may find that it's pay at about the same level. I don't know. There are some businesses that when they close due to Brexit, or even move some of their operations due to Brexit, where I know that the job losses will be real because they're in places where the local economy is dependent on those jobs. I don't know to what extent that is in this case, but what's interesting about this business is it's not just that it's closing part of its operations due to Brexit, or even that it's expanding into the single market. Therefore, you can't claim, oh, it's to do with COVID or it's to do with Ukraine or anything like that. No, it's to do with Brexit because they're closing it down here, opening up in the single market, you see. We've seen loads of examples of British investment going to the EU since Brexit, loads of them. In theory, this business is just another one to toss onto the pile. It's not even the largest business to have done this. But what's of interest is all the statements coming out about the reasons for it and the concerns of at least one union for the wider implications for manufacturing in Britain. You know, in the report, the chief executive of the company, Miles Roberts, is quoted as attacking the government's plans to further diverge from the EU by putting at risk thousands of rules and regulations from EU membership days. You know, I've pointed this out as a problem for businesses before. And there are three big problems with this move, if you are a business in the UK, particularly in Britain. First, there's the uncertainty. The government claim they're going to chop a load of so-called EU rules. Now, they're not actually EU rules, of course. We spent years during the Brexit process making them fully UK rules. But either way, the government are saying that a load of rules are for the chop in the foreseeable future, but they're not saying which ones or exactly when, or what the legal implications for businesses will be. Well, businesses can't cope with that level of uncertainty. Which rules are you chopping? We don't know. What effect will it have on my business? We don't know. When will it happen? We don't know. They want to know what their legal parameters are in order to plan for the next few years. The government, with this policy, is basically telling businesses they cannot effectively plan for operations in Britain. Second problem is it could result in extra costs for doing business with the rest of Europe, on top of the ones they already have. The Trade and Cooperation Agreement allows the EU to impose corrective measures, such as tariffs, on UK imports if the UK diverges beyond the level expected during negotiations. It was expected a certain level of divergence, of course, but beyond that, it's like, no, we'll be applying tariffs now. So that'll mean even more extra costs for British-based businesses, certainly hitting profits, potentially making part or all of their business unviable. And the third problem is what this shows about the government. See, right now we're going through an economic turbulent time. Multiple reasons for it, although the Tories' self-inflicted Brexit is a big one. But it would be nice to think that the government is steering the country through these turbulent times with a fact-based approach to policy. But their decision to just chop a load of rules randomly, for which there's been no work on understanding the impacts, and which may include dropping thousands of rules that the UK government, as EU members, actually argued for in the first place, speaks of a blind ideology. The reason the government are planning to drop these rules isn't because they've identified them as being something that will help British businesses, but because they're trying to purge the country of anything that has been associated with our time within the EU. This is ideological, not prudent policy making, and it's very bad for business. And faced with this blinkered uncertainty, This idea of the pilot steering us through the turbulence with a blindfold firmly in place and necking bottle after bottle of vodka is causing businesses like this one to decide that the best way to plan for the future of the business is actually to invest more in Europe and less in Britain. You know, where there's more stability. That is essentially anywhere that's not Britain. Basically, even Belarus has a more stable environment than we do right now. So the chief executive also asked, what was the benefit of diverging from the EU? He said it adds costs and complexity. He said it's more cost and inflation for the UK. And that's another important point. If you drive up the costs for doing business, two things happen. First, you hit profits. That hits tax returns, revenues in return, because you tax profits. Lower profits, lower taxes. So that's less money for public services. And then what happens? You end up with a government who complain they've got no money to pay for public sector workers. So you invite strikes, meaning more damage to the economy, lower tax revenues, and you find yourself in what Labour are calling an economic death spiral. But businesses will have to try and maintain their profits where they can. So they will increase prices as much as they can to compensate for some of those extra costs of EU divergence. That increase in the cost of goods and services drives inflation up. And this is the thing about this extreme Tory Brexit. Like, leaving the EU itself cost us our influence, cost us our seat at the table. I talked recently about the problems this is causing. But leaving the single market and customs union was needless damage that no majority voted for or even thought they were voting for. It's an extra cost for doing business that reduces tax revenues, increases inflation. It cannot be any other way. You know, these Brexiteers trying to fiddle trade statistics to make out everything's fine. Everything's fine. Look, trade statistics. It's like, yeah, you're fiddling the figures. And the reason they're having to fiddle the figures is because the real ones will never back up their claims. You know, how, even hypothetically, how can you increase the cost of trade for British businesses without reducing profits and raising prices? How? You know, Roberts said, the chief executive of this company, that there were now quite severe restrictions on the movement of products between the UK and its biggest market. A spokesperson for the GMB union said that no one can escape the impact that Brexit's had on supply chains. You know, and unions representing manufacturing workers may well be worried. You know, these are not cases of businesses, say, reacting to an economic slump. We are in an economic slump, and at such a time you may expect some businesses to cut back on their operations, because obviously a recession basically means we're not doing as much trade. So they cut back on their operations, but maybe with the potential to try and rebuild them afterwards during periods of growth. But that's not what's happening here. This isn't cutting back on business. It's moving it to another country. It's a permanent loss of manufacturing demand in Britain. It's not going to come back after the recession. It's coming as a direct result of an economic policy that can only possibly work against the economic health of the nation. And when I say permanent, I mean permanent. So let's just imagine, right? So the public attitude, everyone in the UK suddenly watched this video, just let's say. And that'd be good, by the way. And suddenly changed their view on it all. There was this avalanche of anti-Brexit fervour. So then the politicians follow suit. So let's just say there was a settled desire across the political spectrum, across all political parties, including the DUP, although that doesn't really matter, to at least get back into the single market and negotiate a customs union. Let us just imagine. The businesses that we've been losing would still be lost. Once operations are transferred to the Netherlands and Ireland, for which there's a cost to move your operations abroad, there'll be another one to move them back. Why would you do that? There's no extra gain. There'd be no reason to bring them back just because we were back in the single market. We would stem the tide, the flow of businesses out of Britain. We would give room for growing businesses to breathe. So yes, it would achieve economic growth, but we wouldn't get our losses back. And for every year that we spend in this divergent state, we lose more and more business permanently, because there are businesses that are thinking, right, let's just see what the next year brings. Let's just see what the next year brings. And that lost business represents lower potential tax revenues needed for public services, a higher cost of living, which is not being compensated for by sufficient wage growth. Where's this high wage economy Brexit was supposed to give us? That seems to have disappeared down the toilet. You know, you can see why so many who actually understand what's going on are so alarmed, so panicked at the prospect of it actually being a very long road back for us. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.